There are two sides to every story, but only one truth. Two sides to every story, but only one truth. Since the invention of the television in 1927, the visual reporting of the wars our nation and other nations have engaged in have been regularly available in our living rooms. First, they came to us in the 6 o'clock news, and now endlessly displayed in 24-hour news channels. Reporting on the Vietnam War, those of you old enough to remember, was on a daily basis in the 1970s visualized. It escalated. It escalated the horrors of war to every family with a television. Today, the Russian invasion of Ukraine is televised daily around the world to those who sincerely care for the outcome and well-being of people, as well as to those who may be so busy and indifferent to this war because at the moment they are thinking, this is an event remote from our shores. Why should we be concerned? Has the daily reporting of violence in our cities, graphic presentation of violence in our entertainment, desensitized us as a culture to accept the atrocities of war, abortion, and violence as a normal way of life? What do you think? What do you think? Where did war begin? How did many in our culture become insensitive to the killing of children? Historians conjecture that standard military accounts that the origins of war, can be traced back not to the Iron Age or the Bronze Age, but to the emergence of settled life itself over 10,000 years ago. Human nature being what we are free. We have free wills to choose. This goes back to the story of creation and throughout Hebrew scriptures. The war between the nation of Amalek and the Israelites, depicted in our first reading, was not recorded on TV. It has been recorded for us in the Bible. To know that the outcome of war would be in favor of the Israelites, as long as Moses kept his hands raised up as he viewed the gruesome battle from the top of a hill. Moses had the staff of God at his side. The same staff used like a divine conductor wand to usher in visually the memorable events of God's power, such as the parting of the Red Sea, which opened up so that the Hebrews could escape their ethnic cleansing from the Egyptians led by Pharaoh. When our political and religious leaders do not have the staff of God in their hands, then death is the consequence of their godless agendas, enforced by sometimes legal power. In our first reading, as long as Moses kept his hands raised up, Israel had the better of the fight. But when Moses let his hands rest, the nation of Amalek had the better of the fight against Israel. Will the hands of our political leaders during today's cultural wars remain steady until sunset, until the end of time? The position of our hands should be the position of prayer. Prayer for our leaders and prayer for us, that we may be a nation that does not turn its back on God. Such is the request of Our Lady of Fatima, who pleads for us and the world to pray a daily rosary. As Christians, we are being strongly reminded in St. Paul's second letter to Timothy, which we heard a few minutes ago, remain faithful to what you have learned and believed, because you know from whom you learned it, and that from infancy you have known the sacred scriptures, which are capable of giving you wisdom for salvation through faith in Jesus Christ. Dear friends, take this advice to heart during today's cultural wars that are now striving to intimidate pro-life demonstrators, depicting them as criminals What is the message being sent here? As the vandalism of churches and pregnancy centers go pretty much without due process of the law, what is the message being sent here? Be very much aware of the recent federal court and FBI arrest of pro-lifer Mark Houck. Be alarmed at how he was arrested in front of his wife and 7 children by dozens of heavily armed federal agents in a raid that has traumatized them. The raid and arrest reportedly resulted from an altercation in Philadelphia in October of 2021, when Houck was accused of pushing a 72-year-old man outside of a Planned Parenthood clinic after the escort allegedly verbally harassed his 12-year-old son. The pro-life father, who routinely engages in peaceful protests outside abortion clinics, is co-founder and president of a group called the King's Men, a Catholic ministry that aims to spiritually mentor young men. There are 2 sides to every story, but only one truth. Pay close attention to his upcoming trial in the months ahead and the trials of other pro-life advocates to come, because this will be you and me one day, if we stand up now, and if we stand up non-violently, as we should, for the gospel of Jesus Christ, without compromise, without delusions. Be mindful, however, always be mindful of what the law requires in peaceful demonstrations. Entrances of clinics are not to be blocked, and patrons are not to be harassed. St. Paul charges us, as I do today, in the Eucharistic presence of Jesus Christ, who will judge the living and the dead, proclaim the word. Be persistent, whether it is convenient or inconvenient. Convince, reprimand, and encourage through all preaching and teaching. May we not be complacent and silent, as some politicians and reproductive health care advocates lull the public to consider infanticide as a moral option. May we not remain complacent and silent when politicians and institutions of education, science, and medicine encourage children, little children, to mutilate their bodies through permanent surgeries with the deception that they can change the gender they were born with to something else. May we not be complacent and silent while the occult and Satanist movement pushes devil worship into the mainstream, to where even Walmart is selling satanic products like Satan's Bible and handbooks on spells on their website. The National Catholic Register reported that also being sold online was demonic sculptures and figures, satanic pornography that blasphemes Christ's crucifixion, numerous products and jewelry and pentagrams and other demonic images. Maybe since this came out into the public, there have been some people who have protested this. Maybe some of these items are no longer on the website. However, check it out and find out for yourselves. Be aware and vigilant of the good and bad things present during our time. It's not all bad. There are many, many, many good things too. Be aware and vigilant of the demonic movement, however, that is aggressively targeting our children. Do not be afraid of administrations, local governments, and citizens. We turn our back on God. But watch as our once beloved cities like New Orleans are ravaged by criminals, murders, theft and violence every day. And know that the eyes of the Lord are on those who fear him, with hope in his merciful love, to rescue their souls from death and to keep them alive in famine. There are 2 sides to every story, but one truth. As we study and ponder the question, when did war begin? or from a famous quote from the Venerable Fulton Sheen as an answer to this question. He once wrote, "Unless souls are saved, nothing is saved. There can be no world peace unless there is soul peace. World wars are only projections of the conflicts waged inside the souls of martyred man. For nothing happens in the external world that has not first happened within a soul." Unquote. Jesus in today's gospel answers us that God will secure the rights of his chosen ones who call out to him day and night. And who are his chosen ones? Persecuted believers, those who suffer from war, victims of sex trafficking, those kept in poverty, those killed by abortion, those killed by acts of violence that we are never, as Christians, to condone or engage in. Our day of judgment will come. In fact, it is here already. Our own judgment on who will be our political and religious leaders of the future. God's judgment is upon us. God will see that justice is done for the afflicted, and this justice will come speedily when the Son of Man comes. On the day we are all judged, will he find faith on earth